For example, when you compare, now we hear more and more the rise of African art. When you put African art on one side, what you can say with Latin American art in regard? Do you believe in the rise of African art as well?
You mean in the quality of African art, or in what?
In terms of its market, the size of its market, do you think this market is growing very quickly, or in terms of number of collectors collecting African art, and compare it with Brazilian and Latin American art?
Okay, the problem is with African or well, there are two markets. You have African art and Afro-American art.
Mm-hmm.
So these are two different markets. Obviously, I'm more familiar with the second one than with the latter one than the former one. But still, you have very important historical artists in those two markets. Artists who were already active in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. Even here in England, there are very major artists, black artists, which are being rediscovered now. What I'm a bit cautious about is the speculative side of what's happening. It's a little too fast. You can't go from $10,000 10 years ago to $8 million. That's too fast. So historically, it's never been good for a market, for an artist to reach those heights so fast. So that's the only thing I'm cautious about. Now, as far as the quality of the works are concerned, you have some fantastic painters and artists really that are being rediscovered. I'm not going to give you any names, but it's rather easy to find. Even Tate Modern has done a few exhibitions, and they're always late to the show. So if they're starting to show exhibitions, it means that something going on.
2 years ago, that was a great exhibition. I was in the black art.
Well, I'll give you a name. Frank Bowling, for instance, is a fantastic painter. I mean, he's been around for so long, and nobody talked about him until 2 years ago, and it's a shame because he's an extraordinary artist. So yes, now again, the only fear I have is that it's going too fast.
And bubble is forming. Do you think there is a bubble?
Well, maybe there's a bubble, but the difference being that you really have you have a base of historical artists who are really good, and some of them died already. So it's not something that comes out of the blue. I mean, it's not only the young ones. It's not only you 25-year-old artist. It's not like what happened in the around 2010, 2012 with those zombie abstractionist. I don't know if you remember that, but there was a series of American painters, most of them Americans, who were abstract, all young, who reached very high prices, and then the whole market collapsed and they all vanished. It's not like that, because here you have a historical base. You really have. Frank Bowling is not the new guy. You're the new guy on the street. He's been around for ages, and everybody who follows art in London knew about him. So same as the ones, a few black artists that were at the last Venice Biennale they are historical figures. They're really important ones. So I think it's much more solid than a simple bubble. And it's really, and deservedly so, because you really have good artists. And very bad ones.
How about Latin America? How about Latin American art?
Well, it's the same. It's just that the collector base may be a little smaller, but you have historical artists, very serious people who are. If you go to Houston, there's a fantastic collection in Houston at the Fine Arts Museum in Houston of Brazilian art and Latin American art, painters from the 50s, the 60s, that really shows you how, I mean, how important the scene was there and still is. I mean, you have a lot of thing going on in Brazil, for instance. So I think it's as solid. Now, the only difference is that the collector's base may be a little smaller. So there's less of speculation, and there is also less of upward trend in prices. It's reached a certain plateau, I think,
Mhm,
price-wise,
mhm. So,
but it's a solid market.
how you decide? You say you search around young artists, new galleries, etc. How you pick the a work of an artist that you never heard before? What are your criteria as
Um,
a collector?
the first criteria is for me to see if there's a link to what was made before, because usually a good painter has a good knowledge of art history, and it shows in his work, in their work,
Mhm.
his or her. If you see, if I see that, then I stop and have a closer look.
So
If I
it's a
don't
good
see
sign.
that,
It's a good sign for you if an artist makes you remind of another artist in art
it's not
history, or
exactly
it's a
that.
bad thing.
Not exactly that. It's if it shows in his work that he knows art history, the way he paints
Mm,
or she, the way they paint, the
mhm,
way it's composed, the way it looks, the way, because you can have, there are many abstract artists right now who paint like de Kooning. So that's, I mean, that's not
uh-huh,
interesting. The Kooning was there first. So, once it's done, it's done. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if it shows that it's more, not a spiritual, but it's difficult to define. You see it right away if you know art history. If the guy knows, or the painter knows the history of art. You see, if he
mhm.
just copies slavishly either de Kooning or Bacon, or because he saw a picture in a book and he wants to
Or Basquiat, or Basquiat. We
Basquiat,
see lots of.
you have yeah. So I can give you one example of an artist. Years ago, I saw, and when she was not really well known, Dana Schutz.
Mhm,
When I saw Dana Schutz for the first time, I immediately saw that there was, behind Dana Schutz, you had Guston, and behind Guston, you had Beckman, and so forth. I mean, and it's not a copy of Guston, it's not a copy of Beckman, it's not so that's one example I can tell you, and that was like
mhm,
10 or 15 years ago that I saw my first Dana Schutz, or 10 years ago maybe. And
mhm,
she was not a market star at the time. She was already,
uh-huh,
starting to, but
mhm,
she was among like 100 different artists who were at the same level as she was at the time. So
mhm,
that's basically how I do it. This requires, obviously, I mean, yeah, if I have a piece of advice to give to any new collectors, you have to look, to look, to look, to look, and to look. If you don't see art in the flesh, and if you don't spend your life doing that, then you have a hard time, discovering the good ones. Because in New York, you have 1 million artists, 1 million people. That's a lot of artists. So how do you get to spot the good ones? I'm not saying I'm infallible, far from it. I made many mistakes, but after 20 years, I must have seen thousands and thousands of paintings, of sculptures,
mhm,
of works of art. So yeah, that's how I do it. And you have to have a minimum of knowledge of art history that would go a little beyond Gombrich's story of art. Something more, a little
yeah,
more.
yeah,
This helps a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
That's
Do you think at this point Instagram is helpful
yes,
to compare, at least
yeah.
to see, although it's visual?
Instagram is very helpful. Yes, in many ways.
Mhm,
First, you have access to to shows, exhibitions that you would never have heard of, or if you, I mean, it's visual. So as soon as you get an image, you see an image of an artist, uh, below the image, you see where the image comes from, and then you see that there's a show of that artist. So you go to the gallery, to this gallery site, and I mean, it's a fantastic tool, really.
Mhm.
Now, of course, you don't see the work in the flesh, but that's the only shortcoming I see. The rest is it gives you access. It gives you a fantastic access to millions of things that you wouldn't have access to in other circumstances. I mean, if there's a show in, I don't know, in Tokyo, at the same time you have a show in Africa in a gallery in Nigeria, well, you can see both shows. I think that's fantastic. I mean, it gives you fantastic access. When I started collecting, we obviously didn't have that.
Mhm.
I mean, I think Instagram is a fantastic tool if you know how to use it. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I should thank to Instagram. That's the way I met you. I should tell to all
Likewise.
our listeners too. So thank you very much for kindly accepting my invitation.
Very
Uh,
well.
so uh, so let me also ask a few things about my own geographical place. Have you ever been in Istanbul Biennale and any
Not yet, but
contemporary stuff?
I'm sure I will.
Uh-huh. So, what do you do? Have you ever come across any works of Turkish artists, old or young?
No, not yet, but I'm sure I will.
Uh-huh. So, do you think that for young artists, does it matter where they are
No,
to produce
no,
at this point?
no, really. How would I put it? It doesn't matter to me if I don't look at the nationality or the race or whatever. The artist, I look at the work. So,
Mhm.
well, there is one thing that you have to know, though. Usually, when collectors start collecting serious art, they start with their own art. That is, Belgians will collect Belgian artists, French will collect French artists. I mean, I started with Dubuffet, for instance. So I suppose
Mhm.
Turkish collectors started, the big ones, the important Turkish collectors, which you know better than I do. They must have started with Turkish collectors, and then they went beyond that. So that's a natural way of collecting. But at the point where I am in my collecting history, I really don't. I don't care if the artist is a woman. I don't care if the artist is a man. I don't care if they're black, yellow, white, whatever. I see the work. I look at the work. Uh, so that's what I do. You have to look. You have to look and look and look, and that's how you
Now,
find yourself.
yeah. Now, when you collecting, when you decide buying, do you follow certain topic, uh, or I mean, besides you know the names that you're interested for others, you go for under a topic or a
Not a
problem
topic,
or.
not a topic, but there are certain trends. For instance, there's a New York painter called Amy Silman, which you may have heard of, and I've been following her for ages. And why have I been following her? Because I see in her work traces of Philip Guston.
Uh-huh.
She actually, I think recently she told about Guston's influence. She's a very good New York painter, Amy Silman. She's now recognized. You can see her, some works in auctions. But that's how if I see something in the work that I can relate to,
Mhm.
that has to do either with the artists I already collect or with the story of the artist, then yes, I stop and look. Uh, Also, I never buy any artist without reading before. If there's
Mhm.
nothing about the artist, then I talk to the dealer and I try to inform myself as much as I can in many ways, in as many ways possible, trying to guess who owns what, why they bought that artist, why this artist is important, and so forth. So there are many sources of information, articles, press articles, internet, dealers who talk to you when they want to talk to you. That's how I end up buying something. But I never buy something, on the spot out of the blue.
Mhm.
It's not how I.
Yeah,
How,
I
how
mean,
it works.
you are not a magpie collector. You have
Yeah,
said that at the beginning.
exactly.
Yeah, okay. So, do you visit artist studios, and do you like to be friends with artists?
With artists, I'm friends with many artists on Facebook.
Mhm,
So yes, you can have very very interesting conversations with artists that you may not have with dealers or collectors because the interest is obviously different. So yes, I have very good friends in New York whom I've known through Facebook, and they're artists. I've bought some works from them. They're not well known, but I still bought because I like the
mhm,
work. I think the work is important and maybe will be well known in the future. But yeah, I I like to engage with not all of them. You have artists who are. It's like everybody. It's not because you're an artist that you won't be an asshole. Excuse my French. You
Yes.
can be an artist and be very bad. A very bad person. But in general, the artists I interact with are very interesting people.
Yeah. Okay.
So yes to that question.
Great. I ask you too many questions, but I think our guests may love to ask you questions. So, among the participants, if you're interested to ask questions to Mr. Claude Reich, please do so. I I want to uh, I want to leave the the room to audience. There are some questions, some comments as well. There's one question. What was your main profession from Galaxy? Yes.
So I started in retail, and I had perfume stores in Paris. That lasted for about 20 years, and then I sold them. And I've been devoting my time full time to art collecting and art dealing ever since. Initially, I was in retail, perfumes.
Okay. Uh, why were you drawn to art in the first place? I think that was explained,
Yeah,
right? He was invited to a friend's home in Brussels.
yeah.
Other questions. So for you, collecting, why collect art? I think it's a passion for you. It's not a.
Um,
Uh,
it's a good question. Actually, the art market has this peculiarity that even though you're dealing with many sharks, people who are very tough business people, there is one point in common in all of us, that we're all passionate about art. We are all art lovers. So that's a good point to start. So that makes maybe life easier. Compared to any other market, there is one point. You can speak to any dealer, even the most unpleasant one. He is still an art lover. So that makes things easier. If you're not an art lover and you're in it only for the money, which many people are, you won't last long because it's a bumpy market. The road is very bumpy. So if you don't love it, I would recommend you stay out of it. So most of the people I deal with, and there are often very tough business people, they're all art lovers.
so, do you know the artist Maximilian Davis?
Maximilian who? I'm sorry.
Do you know the artist Maximilian Davis?
No, I'm not familiar with Maximilian Davis.
Have you met Twombly?
Yes, I have. Let me just turn on the
Really?
light because it's a little dark, I think. Can you see?
Okay.
It's getting dark in.
Yeah. You can turn the lights
I'll be
on.
right back.
Okay. Um,
Is it any better now? Yeah.
yes, great. Now I think this question is important. People want to know more how you met. What was your impression? What did you talk to each
Yeah, I
other?
met Twombly before, a long time before I started collecting. I met him because, um,
When he had exhibition in Pompidou,
yeah,
did
but
you
I
did
met
you
him
meet him there?
before that. I went to, he had an apartment on in Rome, fantastic apartment, and someone took me. I won't tell you who, but someone took me to Twombly's apartment to visit. That was shortly before the Pompidou show. And so I met him very briefly. I mean, I don't even remember if he talked to me. I was really intimidated, you know. At the time, I was,
When was it? When was it?
I think it was
Late.
1987, if I'm not mistaken. So that's quite a
Mhm.
long time ago. And he had a fantastic apartment. I think the family still has that apartment. The one thing I remember is that there were works, you know, propped up on chairs. There were Twombly works everywhere. Uh, was it before or after the show? I don't remember. Maybe after. That was 1987 or 88. It's very blurry in my mind, but I do remember one thing. There was one painting on a chair, on an armchair, and I was always worried that that painting might fall from the chair. So I kept looking at the painting. And a long time after that, that was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I saw the same painting in a gallery, on a booth at Art Basel. So that was kind of, that reminded me of something because I had seen the painting at Twombly's house, apartment in actually. He had a
What
palatial apartment in a very nice street in Rome.